Imagine this. You're pushing your cart past the meat section at Costco, eyeing trays of beef, chicken, and pork with prices that seem too good to be true. Everyone around you is eagerly piling them into their carts. But is everything you see really as good as it looks? Costco has long been seen as a shopping paradise for savvy consumers. But when it comes to meat, there are truths even the staff don't like to talk about. The low prices might thrill you for a moment, but are you sure you're not trading off quality, safety, or even your health? If you think you're saving money by buying meat here, think again. Because what Costco doesn't tell you might just be what you need to know most. Comment number 1 if you're surprised by what's coming next. What Costco employees won't tell you. In the hustle and bustle of shopping at Costco, few people notice the workers behind the meat counter. Those quietly working in freezing, high-pressure environments, sometimes lacking even the basic conditions to ensure quality. They're the ones directly handling the products you bring home, yet they rarely get a chance to speak up. And what they know about Costco's meat isn't something you'll easily hear. Many employees at Costco's meat processing plants, like those in Morris, Illinois, or Tracy, California, have spoken out on platforms like Reddit and Indeed. They talk about long shifts, severe staffing shortages during peak seasons, and supervisors who often ignore warnings about overwhelming workloads. In such conditions, strict quality standards become a luxury. Picture this. On a day when thousands of meat portions need to be processed to ship to warehouses nationwide, workers don't have time to thoroughly inspect every tray or batch. A moment of haste, a small lapse in attention, and you're the one who pays the price. Meat that's not fresh, poorly packaged, or even showing signs of spoilage but still hitting the shelves. Worse yet, some employees mention favoritism and poor communication within management teams. When morale is low and exhaustion weighs on every shift, do you think meat quality is still the top priority? The reality is this. Even if Costco has strict internal processes, what happens when the people executing them are too stretched to follow through? The meat in its packaging may look clean and appealing, but what you don't see might be far more concerning. Food service and the quality conflict. Many restaurants, catering services, and home chefs across the U.S. choose Costco as their main source for meat. With competitive prices and large quantities that easily meet demand, it's no surprise why Costco is a go-to in the food industry. But behind that choice lies a major conflict few want to admit. Does the cost savings really come with the quality you expect? Several professional chefs have shared that, while they buy meat from Costco to cut costs, they still turn to other suppliers to ensure flavor and consistency for their signature dishes. Why? The variation in texture, taste, and freshness makes Costco's meat too unreliable for dishes requiring precision. Some chefs describe how the same cut, pork shoulder, beef tenderloin, or Kirkland fresh chicken, yields different results each time. One piece is tender and juicy, another is dry and tough. One batch smells fine, another has an off odor that forces them to discard the entire lot. For those in the food business, even a small mistake can cost customer trust or worse, a restaurant's reputation. This inconsistency doesn't stem from individual errors, but from Costco's business model, prioritizing volume, low prices, and fast distribution over fine-tuning each batch. This leads many in the industry to compromise, using Costco for side dishes but reserving premium cuts for main courses. And that's the truth you should know. Cheap meat might work for everyday meals, but when it's for a special occasion or a standout dish, are you willing to sacrifice flavor just to save a few bucks per pound? Traceability technology is still limited. In an era where scanning a QR code can tell you which farm your apple came from and how it was grown, tracing the origin of meat, a sensitive product directly tied to health, should be far more transparent. Yet, at Costco, this technology remains surprisingly limited. While Costco has experimented with solutions like blockchain or RFID to track products from farm to store, the reality is that most meat trays at Costco still lack specific details. You don't know which state the meat came from, which farm, what breed the animal was, what it was fed, or whether antibiotics or hormones were used. It's all reduced to vague labels like natural, no hormones added, or minimally processed. These sound reassuring, but did you know those terms, despite appearing frequently, aren't tightly regulated by the USDA? In other words, natural doesn't mean clean or chemical-free. It just means minimally processed. This creates an illusion of transparency, leading many to believe they're buying good meat when, in reality, it's unclear. Other retailers, like Whole Foods, go further. They openly share standards for hormone and antibiotic testing, farming practices, and animal welfare. Consumers can scan a code and learn exactly where their beef was raised and how. Costco? They rely on the trust customers place in their brand rather than providing concrete evidence. And that lack of transparency puts consumers at a disadvantage. You can make smart choices, but only if you have enough information. When everything is neatly packaged in plastic and marketing phrases, you're buying on faith rather than knowledge. Lack of transparency in internal inspections. In a market increasingly focused on food origin and safety, consumers have the right to ask, are the products I bring home truly thoroughly inspected? For Costco, the answer isn't exactly no, but sadly, it's not a convincing yes either. In theory, all meat sold at Costco undergoes USDA inspections, a mandatory requirement. However, the difference lies in Costco's internal inspection process, which they keep under wraps like a trade secret. Unlike some competitors like Whole Foods, who regularly disclose details about their standards for testing antibiotics, hormones, pesticide residues, or bacteria, Costco chooses silence. They don't periodically share test results, don't reveal how they handle issues when problems are found, and don't clarify what safety standards they prioritize. They simply ask you to trust them. This isn't negligence, it's a strategy. The less information provided, the fewer questions asked. Meanwhile, consumers are growing more sensitive to issues like woody meat, product recalls due to contamination, or substandard packaging. And when these incidents happen, Costco's responses are often brief, rarely delving into root causes or long-term solutions. This puts consumers at a disadvantage. Without the right to know, you can't make informed choices. You might spend hundreds of dollars a year on a Costco membership, but you still don't know exactly what has, or hasn't, happened to the meat you're eating. Transparency isn't a luxury. It's the minimum commitment a major brand should offer its customers. And when a retail giant like Costco chooses silence, sometimes that silence itself is the most concerning thing of all. Packaging and labels that mislead consumers. When you walk into Costco's meat section, everything looks perfect. Each tray of meat is tightly sealed and labeled with eye-catching phrases like fresh, antibiotic-free, or natural. But if you think you're in control of what you're buying, you might be overestimating the power of a label. The truth is, many terms on Costco's meat packaging, though they sound safe, lack clear legal weight. Take natural, for example. It doesn't mean free of chemicals, hormones, or industrial farming practices. It simply means minimally processed. Yet with that term, the product is dressed up as healthy and priced low enough to keep you happy. The issue isn't just the wording, it's the packaging itself. Large vacuum-sealed meat trays often hide critical details. You can't clearly see the marbling, check the freshness, or distinguish the meat's grade. Information like the animal's breed, farming methods, feed used, or farm origin, details that small retailers or local butchers readily provide, Costco mostly skips. The result? Consumers walk away feeling they've scored a deal, while in reality they don't know what they're eating. You think you're being smart and saving money, but you're guided by layers of information designed to make you ask fewer questions. In an era where transparency is power, this lack of clarity isn't just inconvenient, it's a risk. And when you put that meat on the pan for dinner, the real question isn't the low price. It's this: do you really know what you're feeding your family? What Costco employees won't tell you. You might see the friendly smiles of Costco employees as they stock meat on the shelves. But what you don't see is what happens behind the cold storage doors, where tons of meat are processed daily under intense pressure for speed, productivity, and silence. Many Costco employees at meat processing plants in Illinois and California have spoken out, not in internal reports, but on anonymous forums like Reddit or job sites like Indeed. They describe severe staffing shortages, especially during peak seasons, with workloads piling heavily on each worker. "No one listens to us," one employee wrote. "We're pushed to fill orders in freezing conditions, under pressure to work fast and produce more, while still keeping things clean." This pressure doesn't just drain physical energy, it pushes product quality to a risky edge. When you're packing hundreds of meat trays per hour, who has time to check freshness, spot a torn package, or remove meat with unusual texture? And when an exhausted worker skips that small step, you're the one who faces the consequences at dinner. On top of that, the work environment isn't ideal. Employees describe it as cold, noisy, and stressful. Some mention feeling discriminated against, inadequately trained, or working alongside inexperienced colleagues, making errors even more likely. The most telling part, none of them are allowed to share this with you. They're not trained to reflect the truth. They're paid to get products on the shelves on time. Whether those products truly deserve a place on your dinner table, that's something only you can figure out. But you won't find it on the packaging, and you definitely won't see it in the smile of the salesperson. Industrial farming, the dark side of large-scale operations. Much of the beef at Costco comes from familiar names like Harris Ranch, one of America's largest cattle operations. With their massive scale, they can supply hundreds of thousands of tons of meat each year to nationwide distribution networks. But behind that steady supply lies an industrial farming model that might make you think twice before adding that meat to your cart. In CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, thousands of cows are confined in tight spaces and fed industrial grain diets instead of grazing on open fields. The goal is clear: rapid weight gain, early slaughter, and quick turnover. It's efficient, but at what cost? First, the environment. These farms consume enormous amounts of water, emit excessive methane, and contribute to severe soil and air pollution in areas like California's San Joaquin Valley. You might get a great deal on meat, but the people living near these farms endure foul odors, dust, and animal waste every day. Second, health. Dense farming often requires routine antibiotics to prevent disease outbreaks, even when animals aren't sick. This raises the long-term risk of antibiotic resistance in consumers. Plus, cows force-fed starchy diets instead of grass produce meat with higher fat content and fewer omega-3s, less balanced than meat from natural sources. Third, ethics. For many consumers today, confining animals in cramped spaces, limiting their movement, and forcing rapid growth at all costs is no longer acceptable. Yet, most of Costco's products come from such systems, just neatly wrapped in shiny plastic with unbelievably low prices. That meat might look plump on the tray, but behind it lies a chain of choices you deserve to know about before it ends up on your family's plate. Global Meat Supply Network. When you buy meat at Costco, it might come from a farm in California, a slaughterhouse in Nebraska, or even a processing plant in South America. This diverse supply chain sounds like an advantage, but in reality, Costco's global supply network is a double-edged sword, especially when it comes to quality, transparency, and sustainability. Costco operates over 800 warehouses worldwide, forcing them to rely on an enormous supply system. They partner with leading meat industry giants like Tyson Foods, Cargill, JBS, and Harris Ranch, names that dominate global meat processing. Thanks to this scale, Costco can negotiate low prices, order massive quantities, and keep prices attractive for consumers. But that's just the surface. The trouble starts when meat comes from too many places, too many suppliers, with too little transparency. Consumers have almost no way of knowing where their batch originated, how it was handled, or what standards it met. Some meat travels across multiple countries before reaching the US, and during that journey, quality control, hygiene, and storage remain big question marks. On top of that, each country and supplier has its own regulations, standards, and processes. This leads to inconsistency. One day, you might eat a tender, flavorful cut. The next, with the same Kirkland label, you get dry, tough meat or an odd smell. It's not because you picked wrong. It's because the complex distribution system makes quality a gamble. Finally, this global system raises big questions about sustainability. Meat shipped across countries, transported by cargo ships and refrigerated trucks, generates significant carbon emissions. Behind every piece of meat you bring home isn't just production costs. It's an environmental footprint no one wants to see on their receipt. Food safety concerns. When it comes to meat, it's not just flavor or tenderness that matters. Food safety is critical. A single lapse in production, transport, or storage can lead to serious consequences, from mild food poisoning to nationwide recalls of hundreds of thousands of pounds of meat. Sadly, Costco isn't immune to these risks. In 2024, Costco voluntarily recalled large quantities of frozen ground beef after discovering potential E. coli contamination. This wasn't the first time. Over the years, FDA and USDA reports have shown recalls of Costco meat due to issues like foreign objects, harmful bacteria, or packaging errors. While Costco often responds quickly, recalling products and notifying consumers, the real question is, why do these incidents keep happening in a system that seems so optimized? The answer, in part, lies in Costco's high-volume, low-cost model. Under pressure to keep prices low, meet tight deadlines, and deliver large quantities, many suppliers cut corners on inspections, rely heavily on automated systems, or hire undertrained seasonal workers. As a result, steps like bacterial testing, equipment sanitation, or temperature monitoring are easily overlooked. And once a batch leaves the warehouse and reaches your hands, it's too late. Consumers often assume bigger systems are safer, but that's not always true. In fact, the sheer scale makes tracing issues more complex and the risk of widespread problems even higher. That's why, even as a loyal Costco member, you should closely check product packaging, verify packing dates, and never take inspected labels for granted. True peace of mind doesn't come from low prices. It comes from transparency and accountability in every single step. Reddit community and widespread frustration. If you think you're the only one annoyed after opening a tray of Costco chicken, you're not alone. On Reddit, where American consumers share their rawest experiences, a wave of frustration has been simmering for a while and is growing stronger. Just type Costco chicken or Kirkland meat into the search bar, and you'll find hundreds of comments, reviews, and complaints, not from picky shoppers, but from loyal Costco members. One user shared, "I opened a tray of Kirkland chicken thighs, and the liquid was everywhere. The smell was so off I had to scrap dinner. I told my wife, we're buying chicken somewhere else from now on." Another was more blunt. "I had to toss an entire tray of chicken breasts because the stench was unbearable." They're not alone. Each comment gets hundreds of upvotes from others with similar experiences. Even more troubling is the recurring pattern. Meat with a woody texture, odd coloring, poorly sealed packaging, or meat that spoils just days after purchase. This isn't a one-off issue. It's a sign of a systemic problem that shoppers are losing patience with. Some say they've gone back to buying meat from local shops, even if it costs more. It's not about being fancy. It's about wanting to know what they're buying and avoiding the confusion of why today's meal isn't as good as yesterday's, even though it's the same meat from the same store. Costco may not respond to every comment, but this wave is putting real pressure on their brand reputation. When consumers feel unheard, they speak up. And when those voices join together in a community, it's no longer just personal gripes. It's a market signal. If you're a smart shopper, you'll know to start asking more questions about what seems familiar. Growing consumer discontent. Something is quietly but powerfully shifting in American consumer behavior. They're no longer as forgiving as before. Flashy ads or unbelievable prices aren't enough to keep loyal customers blindly reaching for their wallets. When it comes to Costco's meat, that patience is wearing thin, replaced by a growing undercurrent of discontent and caution. More and more customers share their disappointment after buying Kirkland meat. Some describe chicken as so watery it shrinks and tastes bland when cooked. Others complain about strange textures. The chicken breast was rubbery, like chewing on disappointment. Some are frustrated by leaky packaging or meat that changes color just a day after purchase. What's striking? Most of these complaints come from longtime members who once fully trusted Costco's quality. What's changed? Maybe it's the consumers, now reading labels more closely, researching food origins, and refusing to accept marketing claims at face value. Or maybe it's Costco, too confident in their low-price, high-volume model, forgetting that today's shoppers don't just buy with their wallets, they buy with trust and experience. Some have even switched to local butchers, organic meat shops, or farmers markets, places where they can ask sellers about sourcing, farming methods, or processing. They're willing to pay more for peace of mind and consistency. This isn't just a shopping choice, it's a statement. I want to know what I'm eating. When discontent moves beyond individuals and becomes a trend, it's a warning sign for any brand. For Costco, if they don't adapt quickly, they risk losing something more valuable than sales: consumer trust. Hidden tricks in meat processing. Not every piece of meat you buy is bad, but when it is, it's not just bad luck. It often comes from hidden processing tricks behind the scenes that consumers don't know about. These practices are legal, but can make you think you're getting a great deal when the real value might be far less than you expect. A prime example is water chilling in chicken processing. Instead of air cooling, some suppliers use cold water mixed with chemicals to cool meat quickly, boosting its weight as water seeps into the fibers. Think you're buying 2 pounds of chicken? Up to 10% of that could just be water. The result is bland, mushy meat that shrinks significantly when cooked. Another trick is blending, mixing meat from different sources, even different quality grades, to meet Costco's volume demands. The steak you eat today might be a mix of young and old cattle, prime cuts and less desirable ones. This explains why consumers often notice inconsistency. One cut is tender, another is tough, and sometimes there's an off-putting smell. Then there's the shortcut of reducing meat aging time to cut costs. Beef that's not aged properly lacks sweetness and tenderness and spoils faster. But to keep the supply chain moving, suppliers make that trade-off. What you get isn't fresh meat, it's rushed meat. These tricks aren't listed on the label. They're not illegal, but they leave you without enough information to judge the true value of what you're buying. When the truth is hidden behind vacuum-sealed packaging, there's only one way for consumers to protect themselves: research carefully, choose wisely, and never assume cheap always means good. Immense pressure on suppliers. To keep Costco's meat trays stocked with unbelievable prices, an unspoken condition must exist. Suppliers have to cut costs to the absolute minimum. Behind the convenience and low prices consumers see is immense pressure weighing on these suppliers, and that pressure is slowly eroding the quality of the meat you bring home. Costco is known for capping profit margins at around 15%, much lower than traditional supermarkets. This seems like a win for consumers, but it creates an unbalanced equation for suppliers. How do you deliver massive quantities, keep costs low, and still maintain quality? In reality, many suppliers have to optimize their processes, often by cutting processing time, using less consistent raw materials, or investing less in packaging and storage. Some smaller suppliers accept contracts with near-zero profit margins just to stay in Costco's massive supply chain. Industry insiders say some plants push workers to 14, 16-hour shifts to meet orders, leaving no time for thorough batch inspections. Some suppliers admit to altering cooling methods to save on electricity costs, risking the meat's freshness. Like any industry chasing scale and speed, when cost becomes the top priority, quality is the first to suffer. And you, the consumer, only realize this after buying, when your meal isn't as good as expected, and when the promise of great value becomes a memorable disappointment. No one denies Costco's pricing negotiation skills are a business triumph. But that triumph may be creating hidden pressures that force the entire supply chain to cut corners, leaving you, the consumer, to bear the consequences. Loss leader: pricing to lure customers. One of Costco's most successful, yet controversial tactics is the loss leader strategy. Simply put, it's when a business sells certain popular items at a loss just to get you in the door. And once you're inside, they know you won't stop at that $4.99 chicken tray. The famous rotisserie chicken is a prime example. For over a decade, Costco has kept its price at $4.99, even though actual costs have risen significantly. The company willingly loses millions of dollars annually on this item alone. But it's not out of kindness. It's the art of consumer psychology. You see the cheap chicken, believe everything in the store is a bargain, and end up buying dozens of other items, from milk and bread to TVs and diamond rings. Meat fits into this strategy too. Trays priced below market average make you feel like you've scored a great deal. But the truth is, Costco's profits don't come from those meat trays. They come from the items around them, and from the membership fees you pay yearly. This strategy isn't wrong. It's smart business. But when applied to essentials like meat, where safety, quality, and origin matter, it creates a problem. To keep prices low, suppliers must cut corners somewhere. And it's you, the consumer, who ends up with meat that seems like a steal but may hide untold issues. The point is, you're not wrong for wanting to save money. But smart saving requires clear awareness. Don't let a cheap cut of meat fool you into thinking your entire cart is a great value. Because if the loss leader strategy works, the real loss might end up being yours. Not everyone has time to analyze every label or research farming practices. But a little caution, checking packaging dates, inspecting meat color, and learning about product origins can better protect you and your family. There's nothing wrong with wanting to save. But in today's consumer world, the true cost of an item isn't always the number on the label. It's in what you can't see, can't smell, and only feel when it's too late. So, the next time you visit Costco, don't just shop with your wallet. Shop with knowledge and the right to make choices you deserve. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.